The topic we have today is how can I make things easier for my child? I mean, this is a very parental instinct, and I want my child to have it the right way the first time. Don't go through the pain of feeling bad about not having done something right and get motivated by doing things right. And I want to be there to support them. Or if not me, I will at least ask a tutor to support my child, older sibling to support my child. Somewhere it's the need of human being probably to kind of collaborate and make sure things work out for the best for everybody involved. However, with children, we are also developing skills in them. We also want them to be independent and capable and of doing things, of feeling things, of thinking for themselves. For example, my mother, I'm 58 and she is 78, and every time I go visit her and I leave her house a little late, let's say 7:30, she's so worried that I'll be driving back home alone. And she wants somebody to accompany me. If something should happen, somebody should take care of me. If I start cooking for more people, she feels bad. Things like that. Somewhere we don't want our children to struggle so much. But what I also fail to see is through that struggle, I'm learning how to not overcome it, how to not take on too much of responsibility for everybody, how that I hone new skills. I can delegate, outsource. Somewhere, what strengthens a child is that very struggle that we are trying to remove. So it's important for me to remember as a parent, as an adult, is to not remove every difficulty that the child has. A baby has to roll on his own, developing their muscles, has to have their stomach time. They're struggling to, when they roll, they're struggling to pull their hand out from under their tummy, struggling to lift their head and hold it there for some time, then roll over again, come back to their supine position. All that is required. We cannot make it easy for the child, else that muscle does not develop. So here we are talking not just of the physical muscle, also about the emotional muscle, intellectual muscle, the resilience, the patience, the curiosity, along with my physical ability to do things. So remembering that these so-called seemingly difficult things for the child when he or she is beginning to learn is the very fabric of survival for the child later on. There is this famous butterfly story. Butterfly struggling out to come out of the cocoon, and a man sees it or a child sees it, and they want to free this butterfly to come out, because it's really struggling. And they cut open that cocoon a little, and the butterfly falls dead. And the worms eat it, because through that struggle, the butterfly is developing its muscles to fly. Now, if I make it easy, it doesn't fly, right? So we remove the struggle, but we also remove the possibility of growth over there. And in one of the videos, Jaggi Vasudev Sadhguru talks about this. Modern days, there is some problem, in my brain, let's say, some part of it isn't functioning very well, and I go in for surgery and remove it. But along with it, possibility of growth is also gone. The adjacent areas are also affected. They become impaired. And you can ask any neurologist, you go to the doctor with some neural issues, and if surgery has to be done, they'll say, okay, we can maybe take care of this, but also XYZ will be affected. I mean, that we are talking about the physical realm, but we want to understand it. By removing the difficulty, I'm also removing the possibility for the child to explore, experience failure through which they can grow. Unintentionally, we may be supporting child to fail. Someone asked Thomas Alva Edison one time, what do you feel about this thousands of times that you have failed before inventing that final bulb? I mean, he was like, I needed those 1,000 steps to get to my invention. They were not failures. I knew which alloy to not use as a filament in the bulb. So elimination. This doesn't work, that doesn't work, that doesn't work, this doesn't work. I've tried it. That ability to persevere, to stick through, still kind of know that something is there, it exists, I just need to wait until I find out, is something very, very important. The child has to learn that part. That experience of trying, failing, adjusting builds that resilience. It's a process. So I'm not saying don't remove the difficulty, don't remove every difficulty. When a child will carry the heavy bag to the school, child will realize that I need not carry every possible thing. I need to pay attention to my timetable. Because schools are putting efforts of ensuring the children do not carry over the required amount of books. In fact, there is a rule as well by the board that at certain age, a bag has to weigh certain amount of weight. So when I tell my child, pack your bag, I'll help you pack your bags. I'm not going to help you carry. I'll help you look through the timetable, see what is needed, put something aside. Right? This is very much like when the child is learning their bike. We are there, we put the training wheels on it, and then slowly remove the training wheels. We are still there, supporting, holding, and child will fall, child will get up, child will cry, he will get hurt. But then, child does not want to give up. By nature, we don't want to give up. You have seen young children, when they're beginning to walk, they don't give up. They fall several times. But then they develop that balance. If you have observed a child, he will go near a sofa or a chair, something sturdy, hold on to it and stand up and try to leave the chair and feel that balance in that body. Only when they feel it, they will take one step forward. Again, balance themselves. Again, take a step forward. They are not going to give up. A scraped knee is not going to stop them. That is our innate nature. And somewhere I understand that quality in every one of us and allow child to wear their own shirt, to tie their own shoelaces. They may not do a perfect job, and they don't need to the first time around. Until I support them, until they develop their hand-eye coordination, they develop enough patience, to tie that knot properly so it doesn't keep coming off. And they may come back to me for help. They may say help, but if I'm offering that help instantly, then they are demanding it. I had a nephew, I still have him, but it was that he had to be served the milk at perfect temperature. The milk had to be boiled and then it had to be cooled down, and he would refuse to drink if his mother did not give him the perfect temperature. And she would struggle because she was so worried that her son would walk away without drinking that glass of milk. And over time, he became so particular. Now, it's a good thing that you become particular and you do things for yourself. But when you're expecting somebody to do it for you, that is when everything breaks loose. And when I am so particular that I want it like this only, I am still troubling people around. In some way, we may be in a rush. You go to a restaurant, you want to have breakfast, and I want to wait until the coffee is at perfect temperature. Then I'm making everybody wait. I may pour it out in the saucer and drink it. No, it doesn't work. It has to be from the cup. It has to cool down, but there should be no cream formed on the top. Becomes a little painful. But at least you're not demanding somebody to do it. Somewhere, until the child develops that independence, that confidence, I will support. But support, not do it. Just like when you take examples from nature, plenty of them, right? A seed will not sprout just because you provide enough something. It has to penetrate, it has to go through the earth, develop its roots. It has to go against that resistance, right? Something like that happens with my physical muscle, mental muscle, my human capacities develop that way. So, for parents, right, when we see our children struggle, even for teachers, when we see our children are struggling with developing a skill, with doing the homework, with sports activity, with singing or dancing, let me not rush to do it for them. Let them know that I'm available to do it. Let them ask for a specific help and then offer it. Only if it's like a dangerous situation, if there is a child maybe practicing dance classes, struggling practicing, and now that child is going to stamp on something sharp on the stage or whatever, run and remove it. Because the child may not have seen it, may not anticipate, may assume that it won't prick or whatever. But anything that a child can do for themselves, let them do. Let them get this confidence that they have the ability to do it. Just like when somebody will tell me to walk for a kilometer, I'm like, oh no, that is so far away. But when I've actually walked the distance and it takes me about 8 minutes, and I'm like, oh, that's it? I can do it. Right? So when that I can do it comes into the child's mind, sky's the limit, and they just go on trying, exploring their own limits. And that's what we need to be doing. Thank you.